Good morning, everyone. Could the technique of mindfulness help people manage things like the cost of living crisis? Well, there are warnings that cuts to mental health care provision could be on the cards. So the charity, the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation, has doubled the availability of free mindfulness sessions for anyone in the UK who's looking for support or thinking of trying the technique. Now, Liz Lord is a tutor on mindfulness at the University of Oxford and is working with the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation. Now, earlier I asked her to remind me what mindfulness actually is.
Mindfulness is this natural human capacity that we have to bring awareness to any situation that we find ourselves in. So it's the ability that we have to pay attention to things. It's the ability to be curious about things and to notice. That's a really general sort of definition around it. There's lots more to it than that, but it is a natural human capacity. This isn't something that is out of the ordinary for everybody to hone in on and learn new skills around.
What are the most common reasons people get involved in mindfulness or try mindfulness?
It can be a range of things, Laura. It can be simply to enhance the lives that they're already living, to live more fully and to perhaps refine some skills that they've already got. So particularly in areas such as, it could be music, it could be the arts, it could be other things where they are, it would be helpful to particularly tune into awareness. It can also be really helpful for people who have levels of anxiety or depression that they want to have some agency around, so that they want to perhaps do mindfulness skills as well as taking medication for these things, and they want to help themselves to get a sense of agency around it.
So you're working with the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation. Tell me a little bit about that and what you do as part of that.
Yeah, so the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation are a wonderful charity that work in collaboration with lots of different institutions, mainly the University of Oxford, the psychiatry department there, and they develop and train the curricula there that's been particularly helpful for depression. The mindfulness-based cognitive therapy curricula that has been used and researched very highly, particularly by its founder, Professor Mark Williams, in 2008, when the foundation was originally started. And that curricula has then now been broadened out to relate to not only recurrent depression, but now to helping people to flourish in everyday lives. So it's kind of just been a development over those years. In response, and because of some of that research that was done, the NICE guidelines, the clinical excellence guidelines in the UK, brought mindfulness in as a treatment of best choice for depression as early as 2004, actually. So if you went to your doctor with recurrent episodes of depression in 2004, then a mindfulness course could have been, this particular one could have been prescribed to you as well as your medication, either as a supplement or a complement to your medication. And not many people know that. So this is the basis that we're working with. The curriculums have changed over the years and developed for the general public. So, and in response to this as well, the NICE guidelines fairly recently have now included mindfulness. And I saw some headlines about this just a few months ago, that now the clinical excellence guidelines have been adapted to use mindfulness skills as well for lower levels of anxiety and depression. So it's not just the more severe episodes of depression, but for the lesser.
You just talked about depression there, and obviously we're going into Christmas, we're going into a tricky period for many people. Of course, we're within a cost of living crisis right now. We're coming off the back of COVID, where a lot of people really struggled, people lost loved ones. So how would you say mindfulness can help with those that maybe are anxious about rising bills and illness and job security, and they want to try and reduce that stress?
Well, of course, it's such a difficult time for people at the moment, and therefore, the mindfulness skills are not going to get rid of any of that for people. But what they can help people with is their ability to relate to these experiences a little bit more skillfully, and therefore, on a mindfulness course, you would go through different skills to help with this. And it's this ability that we may have to perhaps step back from certain situations so that we can get a clearer view of them, for us to have that ability to maybe respond a little bit more skillfully to situations we find ourselves in. I mean, how many difficult things happen when we react really quickly to things, and our ability as well. The thing that for me would really speak to people in these situations is the ability that we have to place our attention on things. You know, where we place our attention can very much shape our lives, and you know, this ability we have to ruminate over things over and over again as difficulties arise is a huge problem, actually. And you know, some of these skills can be really helpful to help us to step back from that, noticing this process of thinking, learning to, we're not trying to control our minds in any way with mindfulness. It's not a relaxation technique. It's not a way of avoiding or zoning out of our experiences, but it is a way of helping us relate to them a little more skillfully. So I would say that would be the thing to say around, you know, if people want to have some techniques and skills to do that, then the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation offer courses around this, and it's a wonderful way to learn more skills, and again to feel that sense of that perhaps we've got some agency, some ability for ourselves to help ourselves in these situations.
Yeah, I was about to ask you there that the common misconceptions of mindfulness, because I imagine a lot of people, when they hear mindfulness, they might think, oh, well, that's meditation, I guess, or as you were saying, you know, mind control in a way. Yeah. That's not quite what it is.
No, it isn't what it is. And some of the images that you see around mindfulness, and you know, they kind of a bit toe-curlingly cringy for me sometimes when I see things, because that isn't really what we're talking about here. The mindfulness skills are really specific skills. It's not about positive thinking. It's about how to relate more skillfully to the situations that we find ourselves in. And for all of us, I mean, I was a former school teacher, really busy with quite an overwhelming workload. How can I, in that situation, really help myself and be aware of the situation that I'm in and be more skillful around it? You know, this is not an avoidance or a blocking technique in any way. We accept and are curious around what's going on. We can also find these cues from our bodies, you know, knowing there's just been a fairly recent study brought out by Eric Laux in America, all to do with mindfulness and blood pressure, which if you're interested in the science behind this, it's so robust at the moment, then that study is really interesting. It was on Twitter today, actually. That's where I saw it. And Eric Laux is a wonderful researcher in America. And it was on Good Morning America, I think, today, to talk about this ability that mindfulness has to help us to reduce our blood pressure. Now, wouldn't that be helpful to us as we go into stressful situations? So it isn't blanking out, it's not avoiding, it is working with what we notice, and our bodies can be such an intuitive place for us to notice. So, for example, if you notice yourself getting irritated, you might be in a conversation with somebody and you start to get irritated, and you know that the next step is that you're going to say something that perhaps on reflection you might not want to say. So therefore, getting these cues from our bodies and noticing what is actually going on, and how to then work with that, and to be more compassionate around ourselves and others as we work in our relationships and other things. So I don't know whether that answers your question, Laura. I think I've just gone off on there. But.
No, here, and I'm interested by that, and I'm also hearing what you say about being irritable with people's conversations, and I can absolutely empathise with that kind of feeling. But do you find that more people are becoming interested in mindfulness since COVID? Is it been rising, the amount of people that have been getting involved with the classes that you and the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation put on?
Yeah, well, just to say, the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation, throughout COVID, their ability to bring this globally, actually, to people through the pandemic was pretty astonishing, really. And lots of courses, people were contacting the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation to find out when the courses were, and lots of things were then done online, which made it a lot more easy for people to access the courses. And yes, certainly it's been a really interesting time. So what basically we are launching at the moment is the fact that you can come along to I can leave a link in a moment, just to say we can come along on a weekday at 7 o'clock in the evening or at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, where we will do live mindfulness practices. You will be taught by qualified teachers who have gone through a really rigorous pathway, and therefore, so 2 times a day, these practices are offered for free, and we're doing that in response to, the cuts that are around mental health, and especially for, say, organisations who are wanting to offer mindfulness to their employees for whatever reason, then again, these sessions are offered for free. So you can just tap into and register and come along and be taught by people like myself and other teachers who are on the Oxford Mindfulness team, who will be guiding these mindfulness practices. For half an hour, twice a day.
Yeah, so you were just saying the mindfulness sessions that the Oxford Mindfulness has put on is doubled to help those who might be affected by cutbacks to mental health services. Just finally from you, Liz, I just wonder, I'm sure, people that just don't get mindfulness, and they hear it and they think that's just a load of rubbish. And you'll maybe never change these people's opinions about what mindfulness is. And then you'll have those people that have heard it, don't still really know what it is, but actually might be quite interested in it. So what would you say to somebody who's listening to the programme right now, who is either not really sold on it, but going to hear you out anyway, or somebody who might be teetering on the edge of whether or not they want to be involved in it? What would you say to them? How would you persuade them to get involved in mindfulness?
Well, the first thing is, I'm not here to persuade anybody to do anything. But actually, what I would say is that I came at mindfulness as quite a skeptic. I was teaching in a pupil referral unit for children out of school for lots of different reasons. And what I noticed, and what I then went into, was the science behind it. It's really backed up with lots of rigorous science. So please do not think this is something airy-fairy. I am not an airy-fairy kind of person. And therefore, these skills are really quite radical and interesting skills to learn. And what I would say to your listeners is to just come along. Have a think about it. If you're interested in it, come along and see whether some of these skills could be helpful, and see for yourself, would it be helpful to be more mindful and more responsive in situations, rather than, sometimes we have a gut reaction to things, which, our reactions are there to protect us, obviously, but, can we be more skillful and respond to things in a bit of a different way, and be open-minded, have a go at them to see if some of these skills are helpful. The Oxford Mindfulness Foundation run lots of different courses, and therefore, you might just dip your toe in it by coming to one of the free sessions, and you may then decide. We have a 3-week introduction mindfulness course that can be really helpful just as an introduction to mindfulness, and then you can go on and go on and go on. All I can say to your listeners is that once I kind of read a few things about it and started to do it for myself, and noticed the impact in my own life, it made me think, yeah, this could be really helpful for the staff who worked at the place I worked at, for people who were, kind of quite burnt out and overwhelmed. Some of these skills were really grounded and helpful. So, what I would say was keep open-minded, have a go. It's not for everybody, but neither is running. Neither is some of the sports that we do. Yeah. But this idea of, having mindfulness as part of a good, healthy lifestyle, together with good sleep and good diet and exercise and other things. And mindfulness can be part and parcel of helping us with some really useful skills that might be useful to us. So keep an open mind and just come along and give it a go.
Liz Lord there, tutor on mindfulness at